Shalom everybody from Israel, this is VFI News. Well, you notice I'm wearing my black ceramic vest as well as my helmet to shield me from any incoming rocket attacks that may occur between now and the time you see this video. However, the yellow is for much happier days ahead. We believe that sunshine is in our future. Well, greetings VFI supporters and anyone else watching this video. The big news this week is about something that didn't happen. The much feared attack on Israel by an Iranian-led coalition of terrorist groups including Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen hasn't happened yet as we're filming this video on Thursday afternoon. But Israel's political leadership managed to have a crisis this week anyway, despite the looming external threat. And the source of the trouble won't be a surprise to anyone. There's good news and bad news on the economy, and Israel's Olympic rhythmic gymnastics team brings us our good news for the week. All of that and much more is just ahead on this week's edition of VFI News. Have you heard any sirens? Not yet. So therefore, I will take this vest off after this short introduction. It was reported in a Kuwaiti news portal on Wednesday that the regime in Iran appears to be taking a more pragmatic approach to the current situation than the terrorist proxy groups it sponsors, and this might be why we haven't suffered a big attack on Israel yet. The report said that a meeting was held in Tehran on Sunday calling together representatives from Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas, and leaders from Shiite militia groups in Iraq and Syria. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps generals told their guests essentially that now is not the right time for a strike. They cited the large American military buildup in the region, in addition to air and naval forces deployed in and around the Middle East by France, Britain, and Italy. They've also come in for intense diplomatic pressure that Iran has come under from European powers and even its Russian ally. A word of explanation is in order here. If Iran strikes Israel, Israel and the United States will have a pretext to hit Iran with devastating force that would probably include targeting Iran's manufacturing sector as well as the ports it uses to export oil and other commodities. Russia is, as you know, engaged in a large and very difficult war with neighboring Ukraine, and it has become very dependent on Iranian-manufactured weapons to fight that war. So crippling strikes on Iran's manufacturing sector would be a big problem for the Kremlin. The Iranian ports are also very important for Russia, which uses them to export its own manufactured goods, agricultural produce, etc. to the world, bypassing international sanctions. So Russia has a need for Iran to continue providing many things that Russia needs, and vice versa. But back to the report about the meeting in Tehran. Sources quoted by the Kuwaiti news portal said that the discussion inside the conference room got very heated, with the representatives from Hezbollah and Hamas expressing frustration and outrage at Iran's caution. Or maybe they didn't have enough air conditioning on at the time, I don't know. Well, these guys apparently want to attack Israel, no surprise there, as soon as possible and don't care about the possible consequences. Lord, send them confusion, I pray. The sources said they brushed aside the concerns about Western military forces, saying that they weren't afraid to fight the Americans and the Iranians shouldn't be afraid to fight them either. But again, the IRGC seems to know they can't match the military forces arrayed against them, and they're trying to avoid getting into a fight they know they can't win. That having been said, the Iranians have another reason for wanting to delay a major conventional conflict, and that's their nuclear weapons program, which is close to the point where it could produce a workable weapon. Wake up, West. Wake up, world. On Wednesday, President David Albright of the Institute for Science and International Security think tank told the Jerusalem Post that Iranian academic institutions have conducted a great deal of research into the mechanics of explosives that will set off a nuclear chain reaction. Now, some of this research is also applicable to other areas of technological progress, but most of it is only relevant to weapons development. Warnings that Iran is moving closer to developing a working nuclear weapon have come from several other sources in the past few months, including the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iranian opposition groups, and Western intelligence agencies. The bottom line is that Iran's many statements that its nuclear program is meant for the peaceful purpose, of producing electrical power and medicine should have never been taken seriously for all kinds of reasons, and now we have one more. In any case, this also might explain what Iranian officials mean when they constantly say they'll attack Israel when the time is right. That right time they keep referring to might be when they have nuclear weapons, which would make any retaliatory attack on Iran by Israel or the United States all but unthinkable. Unthinkable. That, friends, brings us to the fact that the world doesn't have any good options for dealing with Iran. But at least the bad options it has are better than nothing. By contrast, there is nothing anyone can do about North Korea, because they already have nuclear weapons. That makes them immune to any kind of outside pressure to change its behavior, either in regards to its own long-suffering people or its neighboring countries. If the world doesn't want to have the same impossible situation here in the Middle East with madmen, someone had better move very quickly to stop Iran's pursuit of the ultimate weapon. On that note, they will be nothing less than a country putting a suicide belt on and exploding the entire world with them. There were reports this week that someone might have tried to do something about Iran by launching a major cyber attack on its banking system. In fact, I was in Tehran at an ATM machine and it wouldn't work. Do you really believe me? Fake news. The Central Bank of Iran and several private banks were shut down for several hours on Wednesday, and enormous amounts of data was lost from their servers in what some analysts are saying was one of the most severe such attacks ever seen. Some analysts said this was a signal to Iran to back down on its threats. If so, it wasn't the only such signal Iran received this week. The United States State Department announced on Tuesday that it has approved a massive $20 billion deal to supply 50 new F-15 aircraft to the Israeli Air Force, along with thousands of rounds of ammunition for tanks, air-to-air missiles, and other equipment. Most of these weapons and ammunition haven't been manufactured yet and will only begin arriving in Israel in the next few years. But this deal sends a powerful signal to Iran and anyone else who might be interested that America has Israel's back for the long haul. I want to take a moment and talk about someone else who has Israel's back for the long haul, and that's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Bible. Everyone should know that the nation of Israel, with all its imperfections, is a project that he takes a great deal of interest in. He's paying close attention to those who pray and work for the advancement of this project. And he's also paying very close attention to anyone who works to oppose this project. Here at Vision for Israel, we've been working to advance this project for over 30 years, and we're just getting started. In the last 10 months that this conflict has been raging, we've provided about 325 safety shelters in the northern and southern communities all over Israel by its borders. We're providing training and equipment to medical first response teams so they'll be able to care for the sick and wounded. We're providing sustenance and support to countless families who are going through difficult economic times because of the situation, and we'd like to do a lot more with your help. I'll talk about that more later on in the report, but if you want to find out more about how you can support the work of Vision for Israel, go to visionforisrael.com and click on the Projects tab. And while you're at it, sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media. Now back at the news. Another delaying tactic the Iranian leadership has tried to employ is to say that they will not attack Israel if there is a deal reached for a long-term ceasefire with Hamas that would also include the release of Israel's remaining hostages. There have been on-again, off-again negotiations, mostly through mediators, for months. On Thursday, as I'm filming this video, those negotiations were supposed to be starting up again in Doha, Qatar. The negotiations are meant to be held from Thursday to Friday, and as I said, as I'm recording this video on Thursday, so I'm going to go out on a limb here and make a prediction. The negotiations are being presented by many as a last chance to bring home about 40 or so Israeli hostages who are believed to still be alive and to achieve a lasting ceasefire in Gaza. It's also being presented as the last best chance to avoid a large-scale conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, as well as possibly Iran. Remember what I said about how Hezbollah is itching to attack Israel and Iran is trying to hold them back, partially by reminding them that there's still a chance for a ceasefire, which Iran and Hezbollah have long said is their main strategic objective. But candidly, friends, I don't think there's much chance that these negotiations will succeed. I think they'll end on Friday afternoon without any progress having been made, and this will remove a main objection to a Hezbollah attack. For that reason, I think there's a better than 50-50 chance that Hezbollah will try something shortly thereafter, possibly even Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. I hope I'm wrong, but if I'm not, remember you heard it here first. Now let's move on to some economic news, of which there is a mixture of good and bad this week. First, the good news, which is also kind of sad. Elbit Systems, one of the largest defense industrial conglomerates in Israel, announced this week that in the second quarter of 2024, its profits increased by 12% over the second quarter of 2023. This is because the company has received so many orders from the IDF as well as militaries in Europe and the Far East. The company now has an order backlog of over $21 billion. Israel Military Industries and Israel Aircraft Industries, the other big Israeli defense companies, are reporting similar numbers. These companies employ tens of thousands of Israelis, and they'll probably be hiring more people soon. Now the bad news. The computing giant Intel is experiencing a global contraction and laying off hundreds of workers in Israel, with the possibility of more cuts to come. I grew up in Detroit, sometimes called the Motor City, because of all the automobile manufacturing plants there. Their impact was so huge that a common saying went, quote, "What's good for General Motors is good for the USA," unquote. In exactly the same way, friends, what's good for Intel is good for Israel. This company accounts for a large percentage of Israel's exports, tax revenue, and overall GDP. Many other companies, as well as the Israeli government and even local governments in the cities and small towns where Intel has offices and factories, heavily depend on Intel. So if Intel is in trouble, Israel's economy is also in trouble too. But there's more bad news this week. The Fitch Ratings Agency, one of the big three credit ratings agencies based in New York City's financial district, downgraded Israel's credit rating on Monday from A+ to A. Actually, I wish I got those kind of grades in school. Well, anyhow, it's a negative outlook indicating that the next review will result in another cut. I'm not an economist, so I can't explain everything about this decision, but the bottom line is that this will make it harder for the Israeli government to pay its bills, which means they'll probably raise taxes to make up the difference. Not so good. Banks in Israel will also pass on the increased expenses they'll have as a result of this credit ratings downgrade to their customers, further increasing the financial burden on households and families. Many small businesses that are already in trouble will probably go bankrupt because of this, resulting in rising unemployment, and the list of bad news just keeps going on and on and on. Friends, once again, I'll ask you to visit our website, visionforisrael.com, and click on the Projects tab. We're providing help to families in financial difficulty all over Israel. We've been doing this for decades, and in the last year, the needs we see in this area have grown substantially. There's every reason to think they're only going to increase for the foreseeable future, so I'm asking you to dig deep and help us however you can. Now, we're coming to the end of the report, but there's one last story I have to bring to you, and I really wish I could skip this one, but it's too big to skip. It involves, once again, our old friend, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. On Tuesday, which was Tisha B'Av, he led a group of national religious rabbis and youth in a trip to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem's Old City to pray and to be seen praying. This is a violation of long-standing Israeli government policy, which is meant to keep intercommunal tensions in Jerusalem to a minimum. Whether it's right or wrong on a moral level to have a policy against Jews praying on the Temple Mount, the fact is that this policy usually does have the desired effect of keeping tensions to a minimum. It does this by taking a pretext for violence away from those who are looking for reasons to start trouble. Now, I know there's also theological arguments about this issue, but I don't want to get into that here. The bottom line is that there is a government policy that Ben-Gvir has deliberately chosen to disregard, and that has many consequences for everyone which he appears to be completely indifferent to. One effect it has is to infuriate his coalition partners in the ultra-Orthodox parties who oppose Jewish prayers on the Temple Mount for reasons that would take too long to explain. They just do, and Ben-Gvir's actions have got them openly threatening to bolt the coalition and force new elections. Wow! Another consequence of Ben-Gvir's actions is that it makes Netanyahu look like a weak leader who can't control his subordinates. To be fair, Ben-Gvir wasn't the only minister doing something that gives that impression this week. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant told a meeting of a Knesset committee this last week that Netanyahu's goal of total victory over Hamas was a ridiculous fairy tale that must be discarded in favor of more pragmatic goals. Gallant might have a point, but he shouldn't have made it in public. In closed-door meetings, it is necessary for leaders to be brutally honest and open with each other. But in public, there must be a united front that gives the impression that the government is in control, knows what it's doing, and is absolutely rock solid. The actions of Ben-Gvir and Gallant and the resulting instability in the governing coalition as seen in the defeat of legislation by the opposition on Wednesday and the resulting chaos in the Knesset give exactly the opposite impression. No wonder Fitch cut Israel's credit rating, and Hezbollah is itching to pull the trigger on a major attack. No wonder Intel is choosing to cut costs by shutting down facilities in Israel instead of somewhere else. No wonder Israel's famously unshakable morale is so low these days, with increasing numbers of Israelis expressing pessimism about the future, while a small but growing number appear to be looking into options for emigration to places like Portugal. I have a lot of friends in Portugal. I think it's a beautiful country, but we need to keep all the Israelis here we can. Friends, if you're a supporter of Israel, or even just a somewhat interested spectator, I'll tell you candidly that right now, we need your support more than ever. Pray for Israel's leaders to have wisdom and to stop fighting amongst themselves even while the wolves are at the door. Pray for everyone who is in economic distress, and these days that means almost everyone. Pray for the soldiers, police officers, firefighters, and medical first responders who are trying to protect and care for everyone in harm's way. Above all, pray for the household of faith, for the body of Messiah in Israel to have the strength, wisdom, and courage to be a point of light in this growing darkness. Now, we're out of time for this report, friends, but I want to continue the tradition of ending with some good news. Israel's Olympic team, much in Paris this summer, bringing home an all-time record of 7 medals, including 1 gold medal, 5 silvers, and 1 bronze. The rhythmic gymnastics team earned Israel's final medal of the Games, a silver in the team all-around competition on August 10th, the last day of competition. These athletes gave us something to smile about, and that's worth its weight in gold. By the way, what is the price of gold today? Well, until next week, friends, I'm Barry Segal, and this has been another great edition of VFI News from Israel. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. God bless you, and shalom from Israel. Until next week, who knows what this week will bring? More surprises ahead.